Hey everybody, you know what? I bet today, like every other day, you probably got somewhere along the way an appeal for a donation to a charity. Whether it came through email or whether it came through the regular mail or text message or social media or even just someone on the street with their hand out to you. There's so much out there, so many people asking for our support, for our finances, for our money, that we don't know who to believe or where to give anymore. We've been tricked. We've been lied to so many times. Funds have not gone to the right place. We've been asked to support something without being given the right details. We've had the need exaggerated to us beyond what it really was. There's all kinds of things that have happened. And because of this, the fine line between what I would call fundraising, which is full of a certain amount of deception and maybe misinformation, and Christian stewardship has been kind of blurred. And it's become very hard as a pastor to teach on stewardship in the church with the proper emphasis and with the proper authority. Now, in this passage that I want to cover, this is the last passage I'm going to cover from the book of Philippians. Paul talks again about the gift that the Philippians sent him to support his ministry. He says they were faithful even when no one else was supporting him. He says they sent him multiple gifts when he was in Thessalonica. But then he says something interesting in verse 17 of chapter 4. He says, "Not that I desire your gifts. What I desire is that more be credited to your account." You get that? Not that I desire your gift. What I desire is that more be credited to your account. It's an interesting concept that Paul is saying, look, I don't desire your gifts. God doesn't desire your gifts. God doesn't need your gifts. You know, a long time ago, when I was in another church, I preached on this passage, and I preached very bluntly, and I made the point very clearly. I said, look, God doesn't need your gifts. He wants you to receive the blessing of giving. God doesn't need your gifts. And I thought it was a very meaningful message, very powerful. But I got to tell you, more than one person stopped pledging that Sunday in church. More than one person came to me and said, look, if God doesn't need my gift, if he doesn't need my support, then I'll keep it for myself, if that's what you're telling me. So obviously they missed the point. They didn't get the message. But this interesting thing that Paul is talking about, it doesn't become any less of a reality because some people take it wrong. Paul is telling us that all of us have a spiritual credit account. And Paul is saying that he is obliged to ask for and seek the support of other believers, not because of his own ministry, but because by supporting him, they get a blessing. You know, whether it's Moses or Paul or Jesus or the prophets or God himself, it's clear throughout all the scriptures that the handling of finances is a source of either blessing or curse for believers. And far from being something removed from the realm of spiritual life, because a lot of people say, oh, Pastor, you shouldn't talk about finances, you shouldn't talk about money, you shouldn't talk about giving. But far from being something removed from the realm of spiritual life, it is at the very core of our spiritual lives. And far from being something that pastors should not talk about, it is something that we must talk about. Paul says that we all have a spiritual credit account. And that's really an interesting thing. He desires that they support him so that by putting a deposit in his account, they will get a deposit in their account. That's the only reason he wants them to support him. Otherwise, he feels that he'll do just fine on his own. It seems funny that Paul would end an epistle that is about joy with a passage on stewardship. But again, I said earlier that this part of the book is about the practical result of joy in our lives. I said joy brings gentleness, it brings peace, it brings contentment, and it also brings thankfulness. And thankfulness expresses itself through good stewardship. Throughout the Bible, financial stewardship is the litmus test for a mature spiritual life. So maybe for your morning devotional today, this was not the most inspirational message you wanted to hear this morning. Maybe it's not the most uplifting thing that you wanted to hear me say, but it may very well be the most important. If you feel you have the joy of the Lord in your heart, then you need to ask yourself if that joy is expressed through a healthy discipline of financial stewardship. As your pastor, all I can say is, God doesn't need your money, but you need the blessing of giving to God's work. So I pray you will be blessed and continue to be blessed more and more each day. Have a wonderful day.